We are Be'ezrat Hashem. This is a recording for Daf Nun He Amud Aleph. Today we're doing Daf Nun He Amud Aleph. We're holding on Daf Nun Dalid Amud Bet at the end of the line where it says Vedodato. It's maybe like 12 lines up from the bottom. So the last time we established that the erva of Achot Av ve'Achot Em, the father's sister and mother's sister, is whether it's the father's sister through his father or whether it's the father's sister through his mother, meaning whether it's his maternal or paternal sister or whether it's the mother's maternal or paternal sister. That's included in the Isur Deoraita of Achot Av and Achot Em. So we took it for granted that Dodato, his father's brother, his uncle's wife, is only his father's brother that his father shares a father with. So Vedodato, Dipshita le letana de min ha'av, Dodato, his uncle, that his father's brother's wife. So the Tana of the Braita that we brought earlier, it was obvious to him that was only his brother, his father's brother through a father, velo minaim, and not through a mother, minale. How do we know this? Dama Rava Atia Dodo Dodo. Ktivhacha Ervat Dodo Gila. So in one pasuk by Arayot it says Ervat Dodo Gila. And we're saying Dodo must mean his father's brother who he shares a father with. And it says in a different place, Dodo ben Dodo Yigalenu. This is talking about somebody who had to sell himself as an Eved Ivri, and now he wants to be redeemed. So it says if his family redeems him. Who redeems him? O Dodo, O ben Dodo, right? Goes after his father's family, his father's brother's children. So malahalan mina'av velo minaim, afkan mina'av velo minaim. Just like by freeing an Eved Ivri, who frees the Eved Ivri? If his father can't do it, his father's brothers. So that's only mina'av. That's a father's brother from his father's family, who they share its father's paternal brother. So too by Arayot, also it's his father's paternal brother's wife. That's Asur Midoraita. Vata minalan. Okay, by Geula, by redeeming an Eved Ivri, how do we know that it's the father's paternal brother? So Amar Kra mi mishpachto yigalenu. The pasuk says mi mishpachto yigalenu, and mi mishpachto we learn from there. Mishpachat Av kriya mishpacha, mishpachat Em el kriya mishpacha. Mishpachat Av is what it's referring to. That's called mishpacha. Okay, v'haditnan. So now the Gemara goes on to different case. Very interesting case. Amru lo meta ishtecha v'nasa achota. So let's say somebody married a woman and they told him meta ishtecha, your wife was nifteret, v'nasa achota me'avia. He married her sister, but her paternal sister, who she only shares a father with. Meta. Then they told him that one also passed away. V'nasa achota me'ima. And he married number 3, who was the sister of number 2 from her mother. So basically, number 1 and number 3 are not related at all. Number 1 and number 2 are sisters through the father. Number 2 and number 3 are sisters through the mother. Number 1 and number 3 are not related at all. Meta, v'nasa achota me'avia. Then also number 3 was nifteret, and he married number 4, who's the sister of number 3 through the father. Meta v'nasa achota me'ima. Then she was nifteret. He married her sister through her mother. So just to get the case straight here, he married number 1, she was nifteret. Married number 2, she was nifteret. Married number 3, she was nifteret. Married number 4, she was nifteret. Married number 5. So number 1, number 3, and number 5 are completely not related. Number 1 and number 2 are sisters through the father. Number 2 and number 3, sisters through the mother. Number 3, number 4, sisters through the father. Number 4, number 5, sisters through the mother. So mutar barishona, and then he finds out really what happened. They came to him and they said, really, we made a mistake, they're all alive. So mutar barishona uvashlishit v'chamishit. Number 1, number 5, and number 1, number 3, and number 5 are all good kiddushin because they're not related to each other. He was mekadesh a lady. He's mekadesh lady number 2. That kiddushin was no good because it was her sister. Mekadesh lady number 3. That kiddushin was good because she's completely irrelated to lady number 1. Lady number 4, that's the sister of lady number 3. Kiddushin is no good for lady number 4. Lady number 5, Kiddushin was good because she's irrelated to anybody else over there. And they're considered his wives fully. And if someone does yibum or chalitza to one of them, it's poter l'tzara. Basur b'shniya Uvarvid, number 2 and number 3, he is asura on them because kiddushin is not tofes on them. They're his wife's sisters. Ve'ein biyat achad mehem poter tzarata, and if someone does yibum to one of them, that's not poter the tzara because they're not his wives. Let's say what happened was really the first one was nifteret, and then he married the second one. So number 2 was a good kiddushin. Number 3 was not a good kiddushin. Number 4 was a good kiddushin. Number 5 was not a good kiddushin. So it'll come out to be that number 2 and number 5 are his wives. Number 2 and number 4 are his wives. Number 3 and number 5 are not. So mutar b'shnia u'v'aravi'it upotrot tzaroten v'asur b'shlishit u'v'chamishit, and he would be asur on number 3 and number 5. So Alma, what do you see from here? What's the point of us bringing this? That achot ishto ben minav ben minahem asurot. That his wife's sister is, whether it's his wife's maternal sister, whether it's his wife's paternal sister. Because in this case, we had that the guy married a woman, and then he thought that she was nifteret. He married her sister from her father. He thought she was nifteret. He married her sister from her mother. So when he finds out they're alive, so they're arayot. He married his wife's sister. He was with his wife's sister. That was an erva. So what do we see? That the erva of achot ishto, of wife's sister, is whether that's the wife's sister from her mother or the wife's sister from her father. So minalan, where do we know this? How do we see this from the Pesukim? So Yalef ma'achoto. So the Gemara says we learn from achoto, from his sister. Ma'achoto ben minav ben minahem, afkan ben minav ben minahem. Just like his sister, it says in the Torah, whether it's his father or his mother's sister, so too his wife's sister is going to be whether it's his father's sister or his mother's sister. So the Gemara says, whether it's his wife's sister from a father or wife's sister from a mother. So the Gemara says, "Velelif midodato." Why don't we learn from his uncle's wife, his father's brother's wife? Ma dodato minav v'lo minahem, afkan minav v'lo minahem. Just like dodato is only through the father, so too achot ishto should be only through the father, his wife's sister, who she shares a father with. So the Gemara said we have two options, two things to compare it to: either his sister, in which case it would be whether through the mother, through the father, or his father's sibling's wife, his father's brother's wife, so which would be only through the father, not through the mother. So mistabra ma'achoto havle lemelef. So the Gemara says it makes more sense that we would learn from achoto, from his own sister. That's a better comparison. Why? Sheken krovei atzmo, because it's his own relative. It's a relative that's to him. It's not a sibling of the previous generation of his father. It's his own sibling. So sheken krovei atzmo mikrovei atzmo. So the Gemara says adarabba midodato havle lemelef. It makes more sense. The Gemara says, I'll tell you the other way around. It makes more sense to learn from dodato, from his father's brother's wife, meaning to learn his wife's sibling from his father's sibling's wife. Why? Sheken davar l'yedei kiddushim davar shel l'yedei kiddushim, because they're similar in the vein that both of them are arayot, that are only arayot because a kiddushin took place. If I didn't marry this woman, her sister wouldn't be asura on me. So it's an erva that comes through kiddushin. But a person's own sister is not an erva that comes through kiddushin. It's an erva that's pre-existent. So ella me'eshet achi alfinan. So the Gemara says, you know what? You're right. We don't learn from his own sister. We don't learn from his father's brother's wife. We learn from eshet ach, from his brother's wife. Desheken davar liyedei kiddushin vekrovei atzmo. So we're going to learn his wife's sister is through the mother or the father, from his brother's wife, which is through the mother, through the father, and through the father, because that's through kiddushin, and it's on his own. It's his own siblings. It's not his father's siblings. It's his own siblings. So it's krovei atzmo, it's his own relative, as opposed to a relative of the previous generation, his father's relative, his father's sibling, and it's through kiddushin. So we're going to learn eshet, we're going to learn achot ishto, his wife's sister, that it's through the mother and through the father, from his brother's wife. So the Gemara says, okay, fine. But eshet ach gufa minalan. How do we know by eshet ach, by brother's wife, that it's through that's also going to be through the mother or the father? That a person's brother's wife is asura when it's his brother through the mother or his brother through the father. So the Tanya, ervat eshet achicha lo tigale. Torah says person is not allowed to be with eshet ach, with his brother's wife. Ben minav, ben minaim. That's telling me whether it's through the father or through the mother. Ata omer ben minav or ben minaim or eno ela minav. The bright as well. Maybe it's only through the father. V'lo minaim, and not through the mother. V'dinu. The Gemara says, I'll bring a kav v'chomer. Chayav kan v'chayav. Not a kav. I'll bring a limud. Chayav kan v'chayav ba'achoto. So there's an isur of his brother's wife, and there's an isur of his sister. Ma'achoto ben minav ben minaim, afkan ben minav ben minaim. Just like sister is ben minav ben minaim, so to here his brother's wife should be whether it's his brother's wife through mother or through father. Or the brightest is maybe I could tell you the other way. Chayav kan v'chayav b'dodato. He's chayav here. He's chayav also by his father's, right? Same shakla v'tari that we had before. Chayav here or chayav by his dodato, by his uncle's wife, his father's brother's wife. Ma dodato minav v'lo minaim, avkan minav v'lo minaim. Just like dodato, it's his father's brother through father, not through a mother. So also here, by his brother's wife, it should be his brother through a father, not through a mother. So the Gemara says, okay, we have two comparisons, two things to compare, to achoto and dodato. So nir lemidome, darin krovei atmo krovei atzmo v'atochech dodato shekrovei ha'av. It makes more sense to learn from achoto because it's his own sibling, as opposed to dodato, which is his father's sibling. O klach derech zeh, darin davar shel kedushim, davar shel kedushim, v'atochech achoto she'isur haba me'elav. Or I could tell you the other way around, that it makes more sense to learn from dodato because it's something that comes through kiddushin, as opposed to achoto, which is something that doesn't come through kiddushin. So it makes more sense to learn his brother's wife from his uncle's wife, because they're both isurim that come through kiddushin. Talmud lomar ervat achicha hi. There are extra words in the pasuk. It says ervat achicha hi. From those words we learn that bein minav, bein minaim. Those extra words come to teach me, to come to include as well that eshet ach, the brother's wife, is also asura min ha'em, even if it's a brother who a person only shares a mother with. So the Gemara says, Ema ve'ema, I'll tell you like this, idi v'idi be'shtach minav. Maybe the extra pasuk also is coming to teach me that there's an isur of eshet ach mina'av, but I still need an extra pasuk. Meaning, don't tell me one pasuk is to tell me brother's wife through the mother, and one pasuk is telling brother's wife through the father. Maybe they're both talking about brother's wife through the father, and I still need two psukim. One pasuk is telling me eshet ach that has children when in her husband's life, and the other one is telling me eshet ach that doesn't have children. So the Gemara says, "Ein labanim b'chaye ba'alam di Rav Huna nafka." We learned eshet ach she'en labanim from Rav Huna earlier on the previous amud, that he learned from the word nidahi, like a nida, that eshet ach that doesn't have children, if he divorces his wife, if the brother divorces his wife, that wife is still off limits. We learned from the words nidahi that just like a nida, right now she's asura, even though in the future it's possible for her to become muteret, but still she's asura. If she doesn't become muteret, she's asura right now, she's still bekaret. So too eshet ach, if the husband is not niftar, she remains asura. So ve'ema, so we don't need this pasuk for that. Ve'ema yidi v'yidi be'eshdach minav chad de'esh labanim b'chaye ba'ala v'chad de'esh labanim lachar mitad ba'al. So maybe the Gemara says they're both talking about eshdach minav. One is telling me eshdach minav that has children, she's asura when her husband is still alive, meaning if he divorces her. And one is telling me that that after she died, after the husband is niftar, after the husband is niftar, he's asura on her. Meaning, we need two psukim for eshet ach, for brother's wife. One pasuk to tell me the brother's wife, who they're all through the father. One pasuk is talking about a brother's wife who has children, bechaye ba'ala, and one pasuk is talking, meaning when her husband divorced her, and one pasuk is talking about eshet ach sheish labanim lachar mitah ba'ala, after her husband passes away, and she had children from beforehand. So the Gemara says yesh labanim lachar mitah ba'ala lo tzrich hakra. That we don't need a pasuk for. Yesh labanim after her husband dies, that we don't need a pasuk for. We can infer from the fact that yibum, the pasuk tells us that only if there are no children is there a heter of yibum. Mashma that if there are children, it's asura, so you don't need another pasuk for that. So Gemara says, not so fast. Maybe ein labanim, she doesn't have any children. She's asura lebaala, but she's muteret to her yavam. Yesh labanim shari le'alma v'shari le'yavam. But if she has children, she's muteret to the yavam as well and to everybody else. Meaning maybe the pasuk of yibum is only telling me that she's that she's not allowed to marry anyone else if she doesn't have children. But if she has children, maybe she could marry other people. She could also marry the yavam. Or maybe if she doesn't have children, it's a mitzvah to do yibum. If she does have children, then it doesn't necessarily mean that it's asur. Maybe it's reshut. Or maybe we can infer from the pasuk of yibum that there is actually an isur of being with somebody with eshet ach if she has children. But it's only an isur aseh. So how do I know that it's karet? How do I know it's included in karet? So there's another pasuk, ervat achiv gila. So from ervat achicha hi, we're learning also minaim, and from ervat achiv gila, we're learning also eshet ach when there is children. La'achar mitat ba'ala is still going to be karet. So the Gemara says, "Ve'ema eshtach minaim kishtach minav, ma eshtach minav la'achar mitat ba'ala sharya, eshtach minaim la'achar mitat ba'ala sharya." How do we know that there's no heter of yibum by eshet ach through the mother? A person's brother who he only shares a mother with, wife, maybe there should be a heter of yibum as well. So Amar Karai he b'havyata tehe. It says, the pasuk says, we learn from there b'havyata tehe that she remains the way she is in her isur. Okay, achoto katav ba karet lamali. So says the Gemara, by achoto, by sister. The Torah says specifically karet by achoto, by sister. And we already know that karet is by all the arayot, because it says at the end of the parsha, this week's parsha, v'nichretu anefashot ha'osot. So why do I need achoto by karet? Why does it say karet by achoto? Lamali leked Rabbi Yochanan. Dam Rabbi Yochanan shima asan kulam behelim achat chayav al kol achat v'achat. Rabbi Yochanan says we need karet by achoto to teach me that each individual erva is karet. I would have thought that if I do all of them with one mistaken understanding, person is over all the arayot, he's only chayav one. So it says achoto specifically to tell me that no, each one has its own karet. Rabbi Yitzchak has a different understanding. He learns that a karet by achoto is to teach me that it gets karet and not malkut, meaning there's no malkut by achoto. And where does he learn that each one gets its own separate karet? So nafkale mi ve'elisha b'nidat tumata. He learns from the pasuk of Elisha b'nidat tumata l'chayev al kol isha ve'isha. To learn from there that every single isha has its own isur karet. Okay, there's a few more lines. Arim ktiv. Dodato the kadav barachmana aririm yu lamali. So by dodato, by the isur of dodato, by his uncle's sister, his uncle's wife. His father's brother's wife. It says. Aririm yiyu. There's an isur. There's a punishment of ariri that he's going to be barren. So why do we need that? Why does it say that? Lekede Rabba, like what Rabba teaches. The Rabba Rami ktiv aririm yiyu, ktiv aririm yamutu. One pasuk says aririm yiyu. One pasuk says aririm yamutu. So we're going to see there's a difference. Haketzad yesh labanim kovran ein labanim holech ariri. If he has children, so Rachmana litzlan, he's going to have to bury them. And Ein lo banim, if he doesn't have children, horech ariri, he's not going to have children. So, and we need both of these. We need to needs to write arim yu and it needs to write arim yamutu. If it would have just said arim yu havamina ad chat I would have thought arim yu. Okay, that's from before his chet, but afterwards. But from anything that happened before his chet, he's going to have to chas v'shalom bury. But anything that is born afterwards, no, because arim yiyu sounds like from the past. Therefore, kadav rachman arim yamutu. Therefore, it says arim yamutu that he's going to be niftar ariri. If it would have just said arim yamutu, I would have thought that means in the future. But the children aval miikara lo, but the children we had before wouldn't be affected. Tzricha. Therefore, we need both. So this last sugya, the truth is a big machloka rishonim. In what cases ariri applies and who it applies to exactly, which type of children. It's a major sugya, but we'll stop here and Bezrat Hashem pick up next week from the next Gemara.